Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Darylyn, and today we are in a little bit different spot than usual. That is because today's video is going to be a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more of a demonstration. I recently figured out how to do something that I have been struggling with my plants for a really long time, and that is how to best transfer baby anthurium to pon. I've tried and failed on this a few times, but I finally figured out how to do this. And so I'm like absolutely over the moon and I want to share it with you. So I have a few success stories to show you, and then we're going to go ahead and do some together. And then I'm going to show you in a couple of weeks the progress. But basically the concept is simple. Let me grab an example. So this right here probably does not look like much, but this is one of my absolute top wish list plants. You might remember it from last year, the goth plants video. This is the Anthurium papillilaminum Ralph Linum X Fort Sherman. It's a tiny baby right now, so it's not going to be like that impressive, but eventually this gets to be just like velvety and dark and gorgeous and bat-like and gothic, and I'm absolutely over the moon to have it. This was actually an offset from a specimen that is much more narrow than usual, so it's even like you can add narrow form onto that. It's really rare, and it's probably like my most prized plant in my collection right now. I got it and it was in moss because that's like how you do with little baby anthurium. And then I was like, how am I going to transfer this plant to pon? Like RIP to my anthurium ace of spades. It rotted. I transferred it to pon and left it in the grow tent and it rotted. And I think that the mistake there was leaving it in the grow tent. But let me show you what I did here. So I went ahead and left this little guy in the moss, and then I just took a little plastic cup and stuck the moss on top of some pon, and then look, he started to root down right into it. And on the other side, we've got this gorgeous, gorgeous root getting right down there into the pon. And so far, so good. I mean, little guy's loving it. This is 100% in a prop box, and it's going to stay in that prop box for a while. It is pushing a leaf out right there. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's pushing a leaf out right there. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and say that this has been a success. And I think eventually once this plant kind of, fills up the cup a little bit more, maybe it puts out a couple more leaves, I will take it out of the cup and take the moss off the top and just put more pon on it. And then I think it's gonna be good to go. So it worked on my absolute most prized anthurium. So I went ahead and tried it on another one that had kind of been giving me some trouble. This is an NSE hybrid. It's the Anthurium Fairchild X. Oh, what is the cross? I don't remember what the cross is. I'll have to look it up, but this is an NSE tropical seedling. It is definitely Fairchild crystallinum crossed with something else. But as you can see, like it wasn't doing amazing. Got some, some signs of stress on some of these older leaves. And so since it worked so well with the RLXSF, which is like, a very special plant to me, I was like, you know what, let's try it on this little hybrid, and it's worked great. Like you can see it's rooting right down into that pon. So I did it again. So we did it again with this Warocqueanum X Waterburyanum that I've had forever, and it just hasn't really done much for me. I stuck it into a similar situation, and it hasn't quite started rooting down into the pon yet, but it is starting to root. Like this one is making its way down there, and it immediately put out this leaf, which I think, definitely still feels like it's not done unfurling yet. It's not done growing. So I'm gonna chalk this up as a success as well. So considering I'm feeling pretty good about this method, I have a couple more anthurium that I really would like to grow in pon eventually, so we're gonna switch those over today. The first one is my Anthurium dressleri NSE. It's a cool plant, and these are really good breeders, and I would love to actually cross this plant, this dressleri, with the Fort Sherman Ralph Linum someday and maybe see what their kids look like. So this plant, I've actually had this plant for like a year, and it's really, the amount of growth is super disappointing. Like I don't think that it loves this like chunky moss perlite situation that it's in. So we're gonna go ahead and do this like moss layering pon method to hopefully get it going. It is putting out a new leaf, so hopefully you don't piss it off too much. So I've got this one, and then I've also got this. This is the Fairchild Crystallinum X Luxurians. And as you can see, it's like actively throwing a temper tantrum. It's hating life. And yeah, I don't think it loves this substrate. Another thing, these square pots suck. Absolutely horrible. I don't know what it is about them, but they suck. I do not recommend, like, I hate them. I got rid of all of my extra ones. I gave them to somebody, and I'm slowly transitioning all my plants that are in these pots out of them. So we're gonna take it out of this pot. We're gonna get rid of the majority of this substrate, and we're gonna put a little bit of moss, and we're going to go ahead and just, you know, layer it on some pon, and hopefully this plant like gets a jump again. And then the last one is this huge like deli container of Anthurium cyrenoi. There's 2 of them in here. Actually, there might even be more than 2 of them in here, but we're gonna do the same thing because I think that this plant is really gonna like pon as well. This was the one that I used to have out that had like some nice big leaves on it, and then it didn't survive the winter, it rotted. But I mean, I did manage to salvage like a piece of it, and it's come back really nicely. And it is finally starting to give me leaves that are a little bitty bit bigger. For a while there, we were dealing with some pretty small leaves. So we're gonna do this one too. There is a new leaf on this one over here, which unfortunately ripped itself up on the petiole of another leaf. So that's too bad, but it'll be fine. All right, so let's get into this because I kind of want to try and get this done quickly. So when I use pon, it's really important that you have like a drain cover for your sink because getting it out when it falls down the drain is a huge pain in the butt. And then you also need to rinse your pon really thoroughly. So I have this little metal spaghetti strainer where like it's the finest mesh possible so your pon doesn't escape down the sink, and then I have the drainage trap to catch it if it does fall in the sink. It's really important. I have a whole like video about getting started in pon that I really encourage you to watch if you're thinking about it. It's pretty comprehensive. Like, I'm pretty proud of it. I'm kind of disappointed that it didn't get more views, but maybe it has to do with like the fact that pon is like so expensive right now. But anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna move the camera over here so that you guys can kind of see more so what I'm doing. Oh yeah, I have a lot of plants in my kitchen, don't mind that. All right, so here we go. I like to use genuine Lechuza Pon. I just find that it works better for me that way, but if you have a DIY pon that you use and you're happy with it and it's been successful for you, there's no reason you couldn't do it with that either. All right, so let me pour this in. So I went over this in the pon video, but like you want to rinse this until your water is running clear. I don't know how well you'll be able to see, but there's a lot of like grit in the sink. Yeah, you don't want that in your plant. You don't want that in your container clogging up your plant's airflow, because I am going to put these into just plastic cups with no drainage. I find that they work really well, but you do have to make sure you really do a good job rinsing your pon. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm just gonna grab one of these cups, one of these drinking cups, and put the pon into it. It's not super rocket science. All right, and then when I do it, I try and like fill it up fairly decently close to the top. I don't want like a huge layer of moss if I can help it, because I do want most of the roots to get down into that pon. So the first one that I'd like to do, which I think will probably be the easiest because it's like just so small, is this one. I'm going to be removing like most of the substrate on this. All right, let's take this little guy out. Hopefully the roots are not in too dire of condition. I mean, I can see some of them and they look pretty good. So let's take this little guy out. Okay, oh boy. Well, that kind of explains why this little guy's doing so poorly. And that whole big pot, like this is all the root that came out in that whole big pot. And there's definitely some signs of some rot. So we're gonna clean them all up and then get him in some nice new moss and sit him on top of that pon. And I think he's gonna do a bit better. Oh yeah, there's still some good root in here though. So I'm not I'm not like super worried about him. Probably cut some of these gross leaves off though. All right, that is all we're left with. Yeah, no wonder this guy was suffering. All right, so I'm going to put it in that cup. I'm gonna just set it right there. Let me grab my moss. All right, so I get some moss. I need to wet it really quickly. Just get it nice and wet. Sometimes with the really dry moss, like it takes like a while for it to actually start absorbing water. All right, so we've got little roots and it looks like I'll be able to just kind of lay them so that they are like kind of laying flat on that pond, and then use the moss to kind of prop it into place. And I'm gonna try and cover, there's like a bunch of like aerial roots that kind of got started down there. I'm gonna make sure to cover those so that if they have any juice left in them, they can hopefully start to root. And then this little guy, I'm really hopeful that this is gonna give him the boost he needs. And in a couple of weeks or so, maybe we will start to see a couple little roots poking out in the pond. That would be so great. So this is the final result. Just got this little guy like this. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of water so that he has some kind of incentive to start rooting down. Let me grab my water. All right, so this little nozzle here is from my sprayer that I have my nutrient water in. So I'm just gonna add a little bit. I like to water it up against the side of the cup and it'll start to trickle down. And I'm gonna fill this cup up about, you know, like a quarter of the way. And I think this little guy is gonna be a lot happier and he's gonna be good to go. I am debating whether to put him into the prop box with the RL SFS, the PAP, or to put him back in the cabinet. But yeah, he's good to go. So then next up, let's do the dress. So this plant is a little bit bigger, so I'm actually gonna put this into this deli. And there's plenty of moss in that one, so I don't need to like wet any more moss. I'm gonna rinse it too, so there's a lot of moss in here. All right, so. Whoops. All right, so that looks, I think, about perfect. Now let's get this little anthurium in there. So this is what we're working with. This is the Anthurium dressleri. Let's pop him out. Okay, so yeah, roots on this look a lot better than the other one, but still, oh yeah, there's definitely some rot in here. Yeah, once again, I really don't like these square pots. I've really had nothing but tragedy befall me using them. So, oh boy, yeah, oh, what a shame. What a shame. There's so much rotted, dead root in here. Like this plant has never been out in open air. Like it's always been in high humidity. So the fact that there's all this dead, broken root is so saddening. Cause it's like, I just like wasn't doing a good job with it. That's so sad. Man, that's like really too bad. And I'm sorry, I'm right-handed. So it's like just kind of difficult for me to not block my shots, unfortunately. I know you guys probably would like to see. So here's kind of what we're working with, the root ball. There's a lot of like spindly little broken off rotted roots. There's another one, unfortunately, right there. Yeah, that's like completely dried out and rotted, so just pull it off. But there's also good news, which is that there's, you know, there's a little new root coming in right there. There's some new root growth here. So this is definitely salvageable. I do feel bad because this plant, like this plant when I got it was a really expensive plant, and it's just not really been given the best go of it. Those square pots, like, they suck. I hate them. All right, the rest of this is looking pretty good. All right, so once again, just like the other one, I'm going to try and get this in here and just kind of position the roots to try and get it like in there as flat as possible, because I really would love to have moss like come up as high as possible. Did I just break a root? I did, yeah. That was really stupid. Shoot. So I put a little divot in the middle, and I'm trying to just lay the remaining roots around so they're kind of flat, so that there's like as much exposed to the surface of the pond as possible. The hope is that it does start to root down into it. That moss is like, it's a little dirty, but it's fine. I'm just gonna use it to kind of cradle the plant around. I'm gonna keep it packed like loosely as much as possible. I think this plant is gonna take off now that it's in here. That other situation was just not great for this guy. All right, so this is the result. You can kind of see the real roots. And already, I mean, obviously nothing has really like changed that quickly, but I think already this makes me feel better, and like this is gonna work better. I'm just gonna stick a little bit more moss in here so that there's, you know, more of a chance that some of the roots that are higher up on the plant maybe feel like growing. And then I got my water, and I like to water, you know, close to the side so that the water just kind of trickles down. And since everything is so far up at the top, I filled this deli up like halfway, maybe even a little more. Like, I really want the roots to be encouraged to root down. So that is the dressleri. So I'm gonna put the dressleri next to this other hybrid up here to hang out. And then last but not least, I've got this crazy Serenoi. I'm actually gonna clip a couple of these leaves that are just not really looking their best off. So this one, bye. And then this one over here got a little too close to the light, I think. So this is what we are left with. And this is only in this deli about like halfway. So I'm honestly just gonna like pull out this and like pull off as much moss as I can, and then just add the pond to the bottom. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh boy, okay. So this one is like pretty rooted into this moss, and when the time comes to take the moss off completely, it's gonna be annoying, but I mean, I don't really know what else to do about it at this point. Just trying to kind of get it as cleaned up as possible and get this like kind of disc where the moss, it has a lot of roots in it, like down as thin as possible. I mean, it doesn't really like matter as far as whether or not the plant, you know, is happy or not. Like, the plant is gonna be so happy, but let's just get as much off as possible. All right, so this is what we are left with. And there's so many roots up here on the top of this disc that I'm gonna put a little bit more moss in here on top of everything in hopes that like all of these roots, like that one right there, I don't know if you can see it, yeah, that one here, like will also root into the moss. So I'm gonna rinse out this deli cup and then also rinse some more pond, but I'm not gonna make you guys watch me do that because like how interesting could that possibly be? So I will be back in a little bit. All right, so I've got my pond. Unfortunately, because of how thick this kind of like moss disc is, I think this is about as full as I can possibly get this. So I'm just gonna kind of like lay it in there. Oh yeah, honestly, like this is almost even too much. Maybe break this up a little bit more. There's a chunk in there though. Oh wow, it's very, very, very much like done though. Okay, let me take this out. Oh, that was pretty easy. Oh, you know, I could separate these. Yeah, I can literally separate them. They're joined right there. I'm just gonna snip them. Where's my scissors? Okay, right here. Yep, all right, they're separated. All right, cool. So, I mean, I guess ideally, if I wasn't lazy, I would separate them out of this moss right now. Oh, but I don't want to be here all day. And yeah, don't worry. I'm not like grabbing the roots or anything. I've untangled so many plants from moss at this point that I'm really just used to knowing like where to pull and like what's moss, what's root, what's a rotted root, what should be left alone, what can come out. So yeah, it's just something that comes with like excessive amounts of doing this. Don't worry, I'm not gonna like accidentally hurt the plant. So, all right, let's get this back in here like that. Get all the roots down in there. Okay, yeah, that's much better. And then we'll take a little bit of this moss and stick it. Oh, this errant little root, you can't see it, but there's a big aerial root right there. I'm gonna just push it back down under the moss towards the pond. And then I'm gonna just put a little blanket of moss on top, encourage some of those aerial roots that are poking out the top to continue doing their business. All right, so kind of just take a second to inspect. This deli isn't as clear as the other ones, so it's a little harder to see, but I'm happy with the results. So here's the plant, and I'm gonna go ahead and give it some water. Same thing, this is my nutrient enhanced water that works really well with plants that are in pond. Let me tell you, they pop. All right, so it's like full to about there. Hopefully the plant will be enticed to root down in there. And that is kind of it. There's our final results here. Hopefully in a couple of weeks, I'll be able to show you some updates and we'll have some nice cute little roots. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me for today. Hang tight for growth updates. Where's the camera? Okay. Welcome back. I think it's honestly probably been like 5 months since I shot the beginning part of this video, a lot longer than I expected to need. I thought I was gonna be able to do the update after a couple of weeks, but it is winter time, so that could be one of the reasons that the plants are growing super slowly. But really quickly, let me show you the progress on the plants that we looked at last time. Hopefully this will be enough to help you feel comfortable that this method works and at the very least isn't harmful, and then you can feel confident to try it on your own plants. So first, let me show you my Papillilaminum rufflinum export Sherman. So this plant was the one that was already in this layered method and already was starting to root in the last installment. And I'm pretty sure this leaf like wasn't here, but it's definitely really nice. It's a little bigger than the one prior. And then we've also got a new one coming in. Oh, it's gonna be so cute. And this plant is just honestly a rooting machine. Like, look at this. This is so robust. This is exactly what I was hoping to see. So I'm really happy with this. I'm honestly, because I'm a procrastinator and I usually don't meet consequences for doing this, I'm probably going to just let this plant chill in this setup until it's like really, really filling up the cup and close to busting out of the prop box, because my eventual goal for this plant is to put it into like a normal self-watering pot and acclimate it to ambient humidity. But once it gets too big for the prop box, it will fit in my cabinet. So maybe that's what I'll do, is once it gets a little bit bigger, I'll transfer it to the cabinet, and then eventually the goal will be to have it out in open air. But this is one of my favorite plants. This is honestly like one of my rarest anthurium, definitely considered very desirable in the anthurium collecting community. So relieved that this has worked and it's liked this. Another one that last time was already in this setup that I wanted to give you an update on was this I believe this is Fairchild Crystallinum X Red Crystallinum from NSE Tropicals. I think this leaf was out last time, but it's definitely like fully hardened off. And we've got lots of root growth. So same thing, I'm just gonna let this plant chill, and when the time comes, I'll up pot it. This one's chilling in my cabinet and it's doing great. So I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing with this. I'm hoping it'll pop a new leaf for me sometime soon. But yeah, so far so good. Really happy with the results on this. This is the first one that I'm gonna show you that was transplanted in the last video. And this is my Anthurium dressleri, NSE Tropicals. There's a lot of chatter these days that some of the plants that were sold by NSE Tropicals as Anthurium dressleri, as seeds or seedlings, actually are not full dressleri, they're bench hybrids, which just means that the plant was pollinated by something unknown nearby naturally in the environment it was being kept in. This one though, I'm like pretty sure is a pure dressleri because it has the ridges on the petioles that a dressleri is supposed to have. You see there. So I'm pretty sure that this is a full dressleri, but even if it's not, honestly, I still think it's one of the most beautiful anthurium that I have, and I'm really happy to report that it's doing really well. This big leaf, I do not believe was there last time. It is rooting down into the pond right here. I think that might be the only spot. Just twirl it around and double check. But yeah, I think that's the only spot where I can see it, but it's definitely, you know, not hurt the plant. So I'm pretty happy with it. Again, like this one's in a much bigger deli cup than the other ones, and it's also been in the cabinet. So I'm probably just gonna let it be and just leave it there, let it fill up this deli cup, give it as much time as it wants. Hopefully it'll push a new leaf for me soon. But I mean, yeah, that's just insanely gorgeous. The other leaves look a little bit worse for wear because they were unfortunately subjected to all kinds of like changes in their environment and me trying to figure out what to do with them. But this one looks really good now. So eventually I'm sure that these little old leaves will probably shrivel up and I'll just cut them off. But super happy with the progress on this. So these are like my most expensive anthurium, the dressleri and the Ravlinum X Fort Sherman. These are like super expensive plants, and I did it successfully with these. So I can't really like give you any sort of better, you know, like evidence that this will work for you. So this one is the only one that I wouldn't say it's a failure, but it's definitely still a process. This was I think it was Anthurium Fairchild Crystallinum X Luxurians, another NSE Tropicals cross. It just like was continuing to fail to thrive. I actually went ahead and put it into my prop box, and I'm just gonna leave it in there, and hopefully eventually it's gonna start maturing and start putting out more leaves. It did have some other leaves on it that did like kind of die off. I think it was just in a lot of shock from the really bad pot situation it was in, and then I moved it, and I think it's eventually going to bounce back. It just needs a lot more time, I think. But this I think was already gonna happen even if I didn't move this plant. So I still think this is fine, and I'm pretty sure this plant's gonna make it. And then last but not least is this gigantic cup of Anthurium Cyrenoi. I can't really see anywhere that it's rooted down in just because this deli is not very clear, and it's also possible that it's rooted down like where I can't see it, like further inside the pot. But this plant has definitely not disliked the situation. These are the biggest leaves that it's given me so far, like these ones. I think this leaf was coming in the last video, but it had already been ripped up, so it kind of grew in a little wonky. But this leaf is new, and it's definitely the most beautiful one I have so far. So again, like I think this is working, and it's at the very least not hurting the plants. So hopefully that will give you the confidence that you need to move forward with this method to transfer your anthurium from moss to a substrate. I don't see why it wouldn't work with leca, especially if you plan to keep your plant in really high humidity. Pond is my preferred method, so that's what I did. And yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will try to get to as many questions as possible, you know, in the first few weeks that the video's out. And other than that, please give this video a like if it was helpful. And if you want to see more from me, go ahead and subscribe. And I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.